in case the news was missed, Oddworld Soulstorm has signed on with the Epic Game Store. Um,
Hmm.
and I guess my first question here is, how's the reaction been on that?
Well, it's very good actually, because I think I can't say that it wasn't a concern because obviously there's a reason you're asking the question, right?
It's a concern.
Right. And so for us, it was like, well, we got to look at what's happening with market perceptions and then development realities, right? Now, when it comes to the project of Soulstorm, we were biting off in some ways, more than we could chew. So our budget was increasing, and we're our own entity. And if we are going to pay it strictly with our own money and no one helping out or pitching in along the way, and I'll clarify what that means. But if we're doing it with our own money, that means the project's going to take longer because we can only spend as fast as we're earning, right? And the further we get away from new and tasty, then the less we'll be earning, right? Because that's just the life of product cycles, and price points and things like that. So we were like, this one's taken us a long time, and we don't want it to take another couple of years. We need to bring it home, and we need to be on time in the market, and we want to hit a number of timings in the marketplace. And we've been working on it a long time already. So to accelerate that, we looked at different ways that could happen. And the most productive way that could happen for us was with Epic. And Epic had reached out, and so that led to conversation. And in those conversations, we were able to strike an agreement that was pretty wonderful for us, but it did mean exclusivity on the Epic Store. Now, compare that to what's been happening on Steam, and I want to say Steam is really where we found our independence. So right. I'm very grateful, and I'm very respectful of everything Steam has granted us, and we've sold lots of games on Steam. And however, the environment of Steam has changed a lot. And let me also just say, and this is just true, one of the reasons we got on there early was when it was still being a curated network. And fortunately, Gabe Newell just liked the Oddworld games. So we were like, hey, Gabe, can we get the games on your store? He was like, yeah, I like your games. Let's do it. Let's get them on there. And it was really that easy, right? Mm-hmm. And he just happens to also be one of the people I think is the most brilliant in the industry, and I think proven that many times. But the store today has a different set of challenges, right? And the biggest one is discovery. Because what happened when they opened the store up to everyone could start publishing and it was no longer curated, well, what happened?
There's a lot of stuff on Steam.
Yeah, and what does it do? It means less sales and harder to discover. So we're watching general sales of the average title go way down. And we're watching the discovery process get a lot harder to find visibility. Mm-hmm. So in our own sales projection, we're like, we're going to make less money on Steam this time, no matter what, because of the Steam climate. And I'm not exactly sure what their plans are. I mean, Steam, is not stupid, right? So if they've now got a serious competitor in space, they need to do something. I just don't know what the plans are. You were going to say? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a lot of what their plans are, from what I've seen, involve first of all, it's tinkering with the algorithm, a lot of that. And there's this big overhaul that's been about 2-3 years in the making now. Mm-hmm. It's like, so, they are working on it.
Yeah, they got to be. I mean, it's the biggest game network on the world, right?
Well, yeah.
And whatever. I mean, I think it's largely. I'm not exactly sure what the ownership structure is, but Gabe is his own, master of his own kingdom, and he's not a stupid guy. So I'm sure they have a number of plans that are visible and a lot of plans that aren't visible, but I can't say I know what they are or how that's going to change how Steam would be for us when we release.
Well, it's like, there's only so much you can do because, how do I put this? Steam is always going to be a large marketplace. Steam is always going to have, tons and tons of games. But, that's kind of true of any store that's been around for a while. Discoverability is a problem for not just like Steam, but say Apple, Google, what have you. It's just,
it's a challenge for a Sony store as well.
Absolutely.
I'd say Xbox does that part better. They don't have the same install base, so everyone's got different gives and takes. But the key to us was the nature of the deal, and the nature of the deal is that we just got an advance against sales. So we didn't have to sell a piece of the company. We didn't have to give up royalties. We didn't have to do the things you would normally do to get financing. Right. And so an advance against sales was sort of a gracious offering to us that was extremely helpful at a great time when we could really use it. And so what we did with the audience was we said, well, let's, we grouped on it and we go, a lot of people are taking slack. There's a lot of hostility for some people that went to Epic, and a lot of that was around crowdfunded titles that had already pre-sold keys. They were
there's a lot of acrimony around the Epic Game Store due to various factors. It's not just crowdfunding; it's snatching games from Steam 2 weeks from release.
So to that point, right?
Yeah, it's just a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So there's other factors, but that was a big one. Why there was certain parties were targeted, right? And the way that they then handled it was not necessarily the smoothest way to handle it with your people that wanted to play your game. And so we looked at that and we go, well, what's worked for us in the past, and what really works for us is tell the audience the truth and go to them early, so you're sharing with them why you did what you did. And if it's the truth and if it's transparent, then we'll live with the results of that action. And fortunately, I think we've been, well, let me say, people like yourself or interviewers over the years often tell me, that's why I like talking to you, because you're honest with it. And at times I take a hit for that, right? And make no mistake, you can just go talk to the big companies and you can see exactly what it's like to talk to people who are reading the marketing PR department script, and it's the most boring fucking interviews I could ever listen to.
We've had those people on the show.
Yeah, it's like, could you please stop reading what someone else wrote for you to say? How about a human being today and less of the marketing robot?
Be better than the Atari Corporation.
Yeah. So in that, we went to the audience. It was announced at Gamescom, and we did a release to the audience, and we were like, here's the deal, guys. This is where we're coming from. It's straight as that, and that's what it is. And surprisingly, I mean, not surprisingly, but the audience was actually very supportive. So they said, well, you pissed me off a little, but I can understand why you did it, and thank you for being honest with us. And for us, that's about the best response we can usually expect, is that we were straight. We don't have anything to hide. This is the condition. We're trying to make great games. We pay for them ourselves. The unspoken is no one has, unless you're doing it, no one has any idea what that means behind the scenes in terms of, how many hours we work, how many sacrifices we make in our life, how much risk is on the table, what do we lose if we fail. There's all kinds of stuff that adds to the daily pressure of life. But, it wound up being a good thing for us.
I mean, we've had people on the show who made games that didn't make it, it's a harsh world out there.
It is.
It is. And I would add that, not only to what Lorne was saying, that it's working out for us, but Epic's just been a great partner, right? They really want to see the game succeed, and they want to be as supportive as they can, and not delve too deeply into like, we want you to do this or that. It's just like, how can we be there to help and support? And so the relationship has been really positive.
That's good to hear. Like I said, it's always a thorny issue around the Epic Game Store because, well, people are getting death threats over it. Like, and
yeah, but it's the game industry, right? So like, I mean, I can't count how many death threats I've gotten. I mean, I remember or arguing with debating live with Jack Thompson, right? You guys remember Jack Thompson? And he was saying, "Oh, you know, I got death threats." I was like, "Everyone who ever played Xbox Live gets death threats, dude. Like, grow up. The kid's 12 years old. You know, you don't need to call Secret Service, and you don't have to have all these security guards with you, bodyguards with you, because we're having a talk. No one's going to come after you. It's called the game industry. People get hot and heavy under the collar, but it's really, you know, it's a pretty tame audience. It's not like gamers got together and robbed a bank. You know, I mean, these are stories we don't read, right? And so the game industry is very vocal. We got Gamergate, we got all kinds of controversy. You got 4chan, you got, you know, all kinds of chemistries. And if you're going to be around this area, you got to have some thick skin because they're going to come at you. I've got so many different types of threats, but honestly, I don't take it that personally. I mean, it sucks, you know, when the internet is not liking you. It's a terrible thing, and I'm sure you guys know how that feels at times.
Yeah, I just don't like, you know, like friends of mine getting death threats and all that stuff. But as you said,
that's crossing some lines, you know, when they're not even involved. But
you know, it's like, it's an ugly situation that doesn't have to be an ugly situation. Like,
yeah, but it's the internet.
I know. It's like, I know how it is. I don't have to like it.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's a terrible thing, you know, like here's something that happens to me. It's happened to me a lot, right? I'll do a show and I'll do 5 interviews. And in the 5 interviews, the same thing might be touched on in each interview. And maybe one of those things is controversial, meaning I might have been complaining about someone or a business practice or something like this, right? And so that'll go out on the internet live. And you know, and it's okay, right? I might take a little slack because someone has a difference of opinion, you know, like don't, you know, if you want to see people come out at you with their fangs and claws fully out, say something about Nintendo. That isn't complimentary, man, and they're just gonna come at you.
I've seen this.
Yeah, and that happens, you know. I understand. And
or say something about Sony, like that's also
unless you're talking to Xbox fans, and then they're fine with it. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, you know, but Nintendo probably has the oldest, most impassioned audience that's still in the game business, right? Everyone else is newbies in the scheme of things. Steam's a newbie in the scheme of things. Sony's a newbie in the scheme of things, and so is Xbox, right? But Nintendo was here long before any of those companies thought about having a platform. And so you have that, right? What do we have almost going on almost 40, 30, 35 years of legacy with Nintendo? I'm thinking of math out of I'm not even sure what day it is right now, but we're into multi-decades of their success, and they rocked it. So you have a more really defending audience on their part. If you could have fans that are as rabid as the Nintendo fans, you're in great shape. You know, you're doing great, man, because they're tough. But
no doubt.
Back to you. Yeah.
No doubt. Anyway, getting back to the deal itself, is it a standard one?
Don't know. I think, you know, different people have different deals with different incentives. I think if we were in the situation where we had pre-sold keys on Steam and things like that, and we're expecting in 2 weeks, we probably could have got a better deal because they'd know we'd be paying more blowback, you know. But for us, we hadn't announced. There was a number of things we hadn't announced yet, and you know, we try to get wiser over the ages and not promise something that we wind up being wrong about. And so I think our passage into that Steam into the Epic Store community was a little smoother because it didn't have those obvious friction points. Mm-hmm. You know, But some people are just going to say, "Well, I will never buy your games anymore." And it's like, well, I can't really help that, you know. But let me tell you something else. If we went out of business, you wouldn't be buying our games anymore either, you know. So I'd lean on the side of I'd rather survive,
Yeah.
Yeah.
keep on making stuff, than keep a few really pissed off people happy and go broke.
Yeah, it's like, believe me, I understand why developers, especially indie developers, will be taking Epic Store money. I mean, it's like we know how much Epic's been paying out in a couple of cases, and it's pretty impressive.
Mhm.
Like, but for clarification's sake, like a standard deal is 1 year of exclusivity. Like,
I can't speak to the terms of the deal.
right. I'm just saying what is usually. There are differences. Like Borderlands 3 is 6 months, Red Dead Redemption 2 is 1 month. But I'm just saying.
And I'm sure they got more for that 1 month than we got in our whole deal, because you're in like big AAA titles.
Oh yeah.
Saying, okay, if we're not here, then they got more leveraging power. But let me say one other thing about it is that we've known those guys since we started, right? And so we know, the founders since they began, and before they had an office, meaning they had split off from id and some other groups in Texas, and came together, and when we were releasing Abe's Odyssey, they were still a virtual company. Like, they didn't even really have an office, right? And then I can tell you that I know Tim's getting a lot of slack out there right now, but my engagements with Tim Sweeney back in the 90s were such where, we were testing out Unreal, and this is how I got to know the guys more. And we were all with GT Interactive, so there was a sort of synergy there, press tours together and things like this. But the guy was absolutely brilliant when it came to code. He wrote a volumetric light renderer on the PC in 1997 because I asked for it. Right. And then he goes, let me think about it. And the next day he came back, he goes, how's this? And I was like, oh my God, I asked for it. This is a technical thing, right? Volumetric light rendering is something still
not easy,
still coming online for games, right? Still, and barely. And this is something I asked him to do in 97. It was kind of a joke. I was kind of like, I'm gonna give him a little task and see how well he chews this one, right? And he comes back the next day and he goes, well, try this. And it worked. Now, it didn't. He goes, it would need to be optimized. It's kind of a complicated problem. I was like, yeah, I know, because I just made another company I used to work for write that technology, and it took forever, and it was really difficult, and it was very challenging. But this guy did it in real time on the PC era, 1997, and that blew me away. And I had already, worked on movies in CG, had been doing CG. Academy Award level CG for a while now from the effects company, and so he was a really unique mind, and I know he's taken a lot of slack, and I have not been keeping up with all the verbiage and what the dialogue is as to why people are so upset and things like this. I got to admit, I've been too busy to dive into that, but
it's better to just not.
Yeah, there's probably a fortunate benefit in that, right?
Yeah.
But these guys, it wasn't like this was a company that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, it's just a lot of, let's say, internet back and forth. I mean.
Yeah, it's the internet, right? It's the hostile internet, which is one of the things I love about it, But, and then until it blows back on you, and then it's just terrible and god awful. However, what I wanted to say is that because I knew Mark and I knew Tim and we knew Cliff when he was there, and then the others that are involved, at that level. But those are some of the most visible figures. But these were people that were like us. They were developers finding their way, and they were, living kind of hand to mouth as well, and they were reinvesting in their own gig. It wasn't like Amazon is getting involved and they want to start a game store. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't like that. It was like these guys that were hardcore developers, and they were now, they had a surprising degree of success with their recent title. And I'm just reading this from the sidelines. It's not like I've been talking about, with Fortnite, right? Just an amazing amount of success. And then they decided to go after the store. And so we knew them as people. We didn't know them as a company entity that was big time, starting a whole big new thing that was going to compete with another group that we knew as people. We knew them as humans first, and then they had this huge success. And anyway, so there was that. So it wasn't like we were looking at it as this new thing that we didn't know. I mean, I didn't know about the store so much, but we knew the people. And when it came to that, there was a long history there, a lot of sort of battles that we had fought through together, just in different tanks, so to speak.
Right. I mean, lots changed.
Yeah.
But anyway, one last question about the Epic Games Store, though I'm not sure if you can answer this. Are there any plans to introduce, the previous Oddworld games to the Epic Games Store?
Absolutely. But I can't go into more detail on what.
I think I can guess, but I'll leave that off air.
Okay. I wish I could be more forward, but some things are
I said.
Agreements.
I've been paying attention to what Epic's doing, and I've seen how they introduce older games.